What's up, everybody? It's Jared with Capture the Magic, and off the heels of the tragic incident that happened at Epic Universe a couple of weeks ago where a guest rode Stardust Racers and died while on the attraction. Since then, Stardust Racers has been shut down while there has been an investigation going on. But yesterday, Universal announced that they were going to reopen Stardust Racers on October 4th, which is today as of this recording. And then after they announced that, they also updated some of the safety and accessibility requirements, further targeting and really limiting on who is able to ride, especially rides like Stardust Racers and other ones at Universal Studios. And then Ben Crump is the attorney that is representing the victim's family, is not very happy that Stardust Racers is back open, and he made a statement on this, which is more than likely going to lead to a lawsuit at some point. So we're going to go through all this, let you know what's going on here, and get some thoughts on it. So for those that may not know and get you caught up here really quickly, the reason that Universal is updating these safety and accessibility requirements is basically due to the fact of this tragic incident where Kevin Rodriguez Zavala died while on the attraction. We also found out that he had a pre-existing spinal cord injury and was a paraplegic, and the investigation is still ongoing, but investigators and Universal themselves have stated that the ride itself, Stardust Racers, did not malfunction during the ride in which he died, so there was no malfunction of the ride itself. But essentially, I think what the investigation is going to come away with the findings are, given that the ride is already back open, is the fact that Kevin Rodriguez Zavala, being a paraplegic, should not have ridden this attraction, given that there were warnings about, guests with back injuries, neck injuries, if you have heart issues, to not ride Stardust Racers. He did not heed those warnings, and I believe what they will end up concluding is that that was the reason for the death in this case. But of course, the investigation is still going on, but Stardust Racers is back open, and no changes to the ride have been made, but they have changed some of the safety and accessibility restrictions for this ride and some other ones. So off the heels of this incident, they're just going to update some of the restrictions or guidelines when it comes to some of these, especially more thrilling roller coasters. Effective beginning on October 4th, Universal has added a new guide for safety and accessibility for Epic Universe, Universal Studios Florida, and Islands of Adventure, which includes some updated requirements for attractions such as Stardust Racers. The Epic Universe website has recently added links to the new guide, which can be found under the accessibility sections of select attractions such as Stardust Racers, and a similar link can be found for select attractions at both Universal Studios Florida and Islands of Adventure, which share a different combined guide for both parks. The guides, which are 34 pages long for Epic Universe and 62 pages long for the other two parks, have information regarding safety advisories, guests using wheelchairs or ECVs, and a breakdown of the specific requirements for every attraction. Both have an effective date as of today, October 4th, 2025. One of the first sections in both guides is a list of rider requirements, which mentions, for most rides and attractions, you must be able to independently maintain an upright position and brace and support your torso, neck, and head while absorbing sudden and dramatic movements throughout the experience. For additional requirements, please consult the ride and attraction listing in this guide. In one seemingly new policy update, there are now 3 groups of attractions with various wheelchair requirements. Select attractions are, quote, capable of allowing guests to remain in their standard wheelchair, while others, quote, have been designed to accommodate those transferring from their wheelchair to the ride vehicle. And some attractions in the first category include Yoshi's Adventure, Fire Drill at Epic Universe, while the second category includes Constellation Carousel, Curse of the Werewolf, Harry Potter, The Battle of the Ministry, Hiccup's Wing Gliders, Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, and Minecart Madness. However, there is now a third category with the requirement, quote, guests using mobility devices must be able to walk independently. That includes Dragon Racers Rally, Monsters Unchained, The Frankenstein Experiment, and Stardust Racers. So essentially, before, it was that you just had to transfer yourself onto a ride. So with Stardust Racers, it was wheelchair accessible, but you just had to be able to get yourself or a family member help you get onto an attraction, but a team member is not able to help you onto any attraction, which is something that the victim's family's attorney, Ben Crump, has alleged that a Universal team member helped him onto the attraction. And again, I've talked about in other videos, I don't believe that is the case, as I've talked to a lot of team members that basically say there is no way they believe a team member would do that, as it is drilled into their heads that you do not help guests onto attractions, and especially those that are disabled. I believe what happened with the case of the victim that died on Stardust Racers is that somebody in his party helped him get onto the ride, but obviously he was not able to walk independently to get onto the ride. So basically these new restrictions are saying for Stardust Racers and some of these other attractions, you have to be able to independently walk from like your wheelchair or ECV to be able to get onto the attraction. The same category now exists in the guide for Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios Florida. Attractions requiring guests to walk independently include Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, for the motorbike only, it says, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, and Jurassic World Velocicoaster. In a later section for guests with prosthetics, it is also mentioned that Dragon Racers Rally and Stardust Racers require guests to remove all prosthetic limbs before riding. Dragon Racers Rally, Monsters Unchained, and Stardust Racers are also listed in a section for guests with casts saying, quote, for the following attractions, guests cannot ride it if the cast covers an area that is required for the guest to meet the ride requirements of the attraction. And then it says the section for Stardust Racers reads, this attraction has a device to assist you with your transfer to the ride vehicle. Please see an attractions attendant for further information. Guests using mobility devices must be able to walk independently. You must be able to, 1, maintain an upright position, 2, support your torso, neck, and head while absorbing sudden and dramatic movements, and 3, brace your body with at least one natural upper extremity. So I don't really know why you would have a device to assist you with your transfer to the ride vehicle if you also have to walk independently, but either way, it seems now you do have to be able to walk independently, which if you're looking at, a lot of people had questions about team members allowing Kevin Rodriguez Zavala to ride Stardust Racers given the fact that he was unable to walk. But the other wrinkle to this is when you're talking about ADA compliance, you cannot ask somebody about their disability. There's plenty of ride warnings that were already there on this attraction. And essentially, if a guest is able to get themselves onto the ride or was able to get themselves onto the ride, whichever way that was, there's really no way a Universal team member could really step in and just say you can't ride without potentially running into like discrimination issues and such like that. I suppose if there was something that was really standing out to them, I was saying like this person can't ride it, but again, you'd have to be very sure about that. And then as you were seeing a lawsuit more than likely going to happen after the tragic incident, you very likely could see yourself set up for another lawsuit if you didn't let somebody ride due to a disability. So I always felt Universal team members were kind of in a no-win situation in that environment, which is much different now than it was then. Before, you didn't have a guest that had died on this attraction. But before, if you hear the ride warnings that they're able to get onto the ride, that's kind of all that was required. And there really wasn't a place where the team members could really just sit there and, they're not going to give a physical on the loading platform here, but making somebody be able to walk independently is sort of saying like, we're going to make you prove that you can walk and be able to handle this attraction. And so I think that was a way in which to basically say in this attraction that if you are a paraplegic or along those lines, that you can't ride this ride. That's kind of my take or my guess on this with this added language here. There's also some signage updates in the parks. It says matching some of these changes, select attraction signage inside Epic Universe has been updated. Both Dragon Racers Rally and Monsters Unchained now have additional circles in the do not ride if you have the following condition sections for weakened bones or muscles, inability to independently maintain an upright position, and other conditions that may be aggravated by this ride. These new warnings join the existing categories for heart conditions, unhealed surgery, motion sickness, and other similar conditions. It says we expect the signage for Stardust Racers will have similar updated wording when it reopens. I would assume so. And also, that's very targeted language here. And I think this is more than likely what's also going to kind of give us a glimpse of what this investigation is going to end up showing here when they're talking about weakened bones or muscles. And when you are talking about somebody with the disability of being paralyzed, they typically will have weakened bones and, of course, weakened muscles. So they're obviously updating the ride warnings based a lot on this very tragic incident where somebody died and really trying to narrow this down even further. So adding that extra language doesn't really, there's nothing I don't think a team member could sit there and say, hey, you have weakened bones, or like, hey, you have weakened muscles. But if somebody feels that they are okay to do this, at the very least, they are basically saying, like, if you have these issues, do not do this, as they're just going to give a lot more warnings here, because ultimately it is up to you to ride an attraction. And if you ride something with a pre-existing condition and they warn you about it, by the letter of the law, it doesn't mean there can't be a lawsuit brought, but typically Universal would be covered in that situation. They say, while it is possible the two events are not related, the date of October 4th on both of these guys happens to be the same day Universal has announced the planned reopening of Stardust Racers. Really? You think it's possible that these two events happen to be completely unrelated, and then after this incident happens, they just so happen to update the language of all this stuff, basically targeting the exact same disability that the guest had that passed away from this? I don't know how that would not be possible, that these two events are not related. That seems like a silly statement there. But the attraction has been closed since September 17th, but it is reopening today, and we're going to talk about the testing that was going on there. And of course, Stardust Racers is supposed to reopen today. And this says Stardust Racers has testing being done with team members ahead of reopening. So you can see here somebody is on the attraction riding it during some testing, much like we had seen many times before the park opened during previews and whenever Epic Universe was being constructed. And Universal announced yesterday that they were going to reopen this attraction, and Karen Irwin made a statement to Universal team members and said, our extensive review was conducted working closely with local officials and the state of Florida, observed the testing and reviewed the results. In addition, the ride system manufacturer of record and an independent third-party roller coaster engineering expert conducted their own on-site testing and validated our findings. I am thankful for their participation throughout this important process. Safety, as always, is our top priority. To further assist guests in determining whether they can or cannot ride an attraction, we are updating operational procedures and attraction signage to reinforce existing ride warnings and physical eligibility requirements at Stardust Racers and other rides. The attraction seems to be operating as it would be normally, with both vehicles running at the same time with what appears to be regular speed. However, team members are not yet allowing guests into the queue, and this was as of this morning, so the attraction may not reopen until later this afternoon, and the reopening plans could also be affected by local weather conditions. So to get a further update on the actual status of Stardust Racers as of about 28 minutes ago, it has reopened. It looked like it reopened with a 150-minute wait. There were some videos of some people getting in line for it, and there are very long lines. There was rain in the area, so I think that's why it was delayed on some of the reopening here. We can see here, this is Jaden Williams on Twitter X, and showing being in line, that there's a pretty decent amount of people that are wanting to get on this. We can see here there's a whole lot of people heading that way to get on Stardust Racers. So here, Alex on Twitter says, the stampede of people when Stardust opened is crazy. So it is reopened, and I'm guessing at this point people have now ridden it. Obviously, you can tell from the video here that it has been raining, so I don't know if there's going to be more rain that comes through. That's probably, again, why it didn't reopen earlier this afternoon. It's almost 7:30 here at this moment, so probably it reopened around 7 o'clock, and we'll see if it runs the rest of the night. But it is reopened, and seemingly a lot of people are very happy about that. But one person that is not happy about this is Ben Crump, who made a statement on this, of course being the attorney of the victim's family here. It says, Attorney Ben Crump condemns Universal decision to reopen Stardust Racers amid ongoing death investigation. It says, quote, Stardust Racers is evidence in an active death investigation. Reopening the ride before our experts can examine every component is unadulterated spoliation of evidence, a grave risk to public safety, and puts profit over people's lives. Universal reportedly told employees the ride functioned as intended, as did the investigators, and also 3 other entities that looked at this ride. If that is accurate, then the design itself is deadly. So he's now shifting it completely and saying that the ride itself is just a deadly ride. So not only going at Universal, also going at Mack Rides, but alleging that this ride itself is deadly is quite a statement. Because Mack Rides makes a lot of roller coasters. And not only would Universal fight this, I'm sure Mack, they're going to have their lawyers involved in this. And you'd also have to go in like state inspections. You'd have to go with the code in which the coaster was built. So I don't know the chances of that, but that seems like a very, very tough battle to go after if you're basically just going to make the case that this ride is inherently deadly when there's only been one death on this ride, and then the details of that end up, being what they are with the physical state of the guest who passed away. We are demanding that Universal pause the reopening, preserve all evidence, and allow our experts to inspect it. If they refuse, we will address Universal's callous actions in court, said attorney Ben Crump. So obviously, this is the first time he's actually ever said something about taking it to court. Everyone has known this is likely where it's going to go regardless, but he's essentially telling them that they're going to file a lawsuit over this. But they're talking about evidence. The way an investigation works is, the authorities gather the evidence, which they have done here. So to say this is an active, essentially crime scene here, whatever evidence was there has already been collected as the investigation is being handled. Again, you had 4 different groups come and look at this coaster, one from Universal, one from Mack or Mock Rides. People always yell at me when I say Mack Rides, but Mack to me sounds better. But okay, Mock Rides. And then they had the state inspectors and investigators, and then they had an independent third party come in here and look at this, and all of them have said the exact same thing here. I'm sure Ben Crump is wanting their team of people to come in here and look at this, because I'm going to assume more than likely if they came in and looked at this, they're going to come away and say that they found issues with this ride. And then they're going to go on to a press conference and announce all these issues that they're going to have. Then Kevin's parents, Carlos Rodriguez Ortiz and Ana Zavala, said, quote, by rushing to reopen this ride as if nothing happened, Universal is showing great disregard for Kevin's life, our family's pain, and the safety of every rider who steps onto that coaster. We are horrified that Universal would put the ride back into operation so quickly. So I'm not going to go at the family. It's horrible what they've gone through. I can't imagine. I have a ton of compassion for them. They want answers. Again, thoughts and prayers for them. Like, it's an incredibly difficult time for them. And, when you're talking about that, it's like, how long is this attraction supposed to be closed? If it's found that Universal did nothing wrong, the ride didn't malfunction, the ride warnings were there, are they wanting to stay closed until the investigation is done? Which I would assume, by the way, this ride opening, that the investigation will be completed probably next week, would be my assumption. It's just maybe formalities of terms of the report coming out. Are they wanting it to be closed forever? It just seems, I don't know what, obviously from their perspective, like, they lost a son and they're never going to have him back. And that's incredibly sad. But from a standpoint of, you're running a theme park and, you gave the warnings, the ride is deemed to be okay. I don't really think that's disrespectful to Kevin. I think that's just basically looking at the situation as it is. It's a business. Universal has, shown a lot of compassion, said they are devastated by this. And Ben Crump stated that they have not made contact with the family. I have been told that that is not true, that there has been contact between Universal and Kevin's family throughout all of this. And if it goes to a trial, a lot of those details will come out about this, which is why I don't think it's going to go to a trial, because a lot of the things that Ben Crump is claiming, if what I have been told is accurate, are not going to look good on him in terms of finding out what the truth is here. So I do feel like that is definitely where he is angling this and trying to get a settlement out of this by being a thorn in Universal's side and making all sorts of claims and accusations, which I think he will continue to do, either until this goes to trial or there's a verdict, or until there is some sort of settlement. So I don't know if that will happen anytime soon. And I believe there's also going to be a press conference on Monday. So I'm sure that is not going to be the end of all of this, hearing about this incident here. But as of now, that is all the information that I know in terms of Stardust reopening, the new safety precautions, and the fact that it now seems to be currently running, with a lot of people seemingly very excited to ride it that are at Epic Universe today. But when there is more information about this, we will let you know about it on here. But for now, that is going to be it, though, for this video. So if you like this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel, as we do lots of coverage here of Universal Studios, Epic Universe, Disney World, and pop culture. And let us know in the comments, what do you think about all this? And until next time, we will see you in the parks.